Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, I got a good one for you. I have an amazing guest who I happen to personally know, which is rare for this show if you're a longtime listener. But Steve Jefferys, we're going to talk about the challenges new leaders face in stepping into leadership roles. Maybe you found yourself there in the past. But let's dive in. Steve, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks very much, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be here.
So your company, you're the founder of Your Shift, which I think is a really cool name for a company, which is, I guess, what we're talking about today, right? Shifting into that leadership role. Where does this focus come from for you?
Absolutely. Well, for me, it comes from personal experience. So I was in the advertising industry for a long time, and I loved it. It was a great industry to be in. Met my wife there for a start, and also learned a hell of a lot of stuff. And I think certainly in the role that I was in, I was very much, I had to be good enough at quite a lot of things. Now, that's not to mean I didn't have a particular specialism, but the type of role I was in, and that served me really, really well as I went through my career, until I got to a leadership position where certain things needed to be sharpened up a little bit more. And I think that's really where the genesis of what eventually became my new career, my second career, if you like, came about, which was looking back on when I went into a leadership position for the first time. All of a sudden, everything went out the window. You know, the classic, what got you here won't get you there. And moving from, control to influence, as I like to talk about it now, was a massive step to take. And that can cut across many different industries in many different ways. And obviously, I can only speak from my personal experience. But in founding my own coaching business, I wanted it to be something which was simple and practical. There's lots and lots of coaches out there in the world, all doing great work. I wanted mine to be true to my own values and true to my own experience. Not that I'd necessarily use that and bring that to bear within conversations, but something which was clear, straightforward, simple, action-focused, quite punchy, and short-term in focus as well. Not short-term in terms of the impacts that my clients have, but short-term in that clients almost hothouse where they're at to help them kind of understand where their different strengths, areas of growth and development are, and then work with me to be able to bring those to life in a way that's right for them. Long intro there, but hopefully that summarizes it well.
No, it's great. And I think that story's interesting, right? We end up teaching what we've been through to some degree in our lives. And I definitely see that in your journey. But I'm curious, because this happens to a lot of people when you say going from control to influence. I love that, by the way. But you have full ownership of what you do, how you do it, well, to some degree within a company. And then boom, you're in charge of people. And the tendency for a lot of people is to micromanage, which is obviously very poor leadership. So what were some of the things that surprised you in that phase of your journey? And maybe does that show up? Do those same things show up with some of your clients too, about how difficult that transition really is?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm often quite surprised when, clients bring things to the table, and I kind of think, well, I've been there, I've done that, I've experienced that. And I oddly get quite reassured by the fact that I wasn't just, the outlier there. And it's interesting that you mentioned there, Brandon, about micromanaging. And I was absolutely guilty of that. When I first went into a leadership position, I kind of treated it just like everything else. And I thought, well, it worked before, it'll work again. It took me a little while to figure that bit out. But then I think what was interesting for me was I didn't realize until probably a couple of years down the line that there's all these things that if I'd have got them in balance a lot earlier, I could have been a much better leader. I could have built better credibility. I could have got ahead faster, built more trust with the teams that I was leading. And I had, from my own experience, quite a lot of regret in not having done that to the best of my ability. So I think it is. I think it is. It's very true. I think certainly when I start working with clients, I mean, it obviously varies from industry to industry, but there's an element of assuming that coaching is just about making them better at stuff that they're currently not so good at. And it's not that. Okay, it might be part of it. I think a lot of it, and often where I start my own coaching conversations with people, is to understand what their strengths are and how they can maximize those, because that's going to give you the platform to do your best work. I talk quite a lot about raising the floor and raising the ceiling. Raising the floor being maximizing the impact of the strength that you've got, and then further to that, raising the ceiling, which is what are those kind of headroom opportunities really, where you know what, these are the things that you might need to do more of that maybe either don't come naturally to you or you haven't necessarily developed muscle memory in doing them in the past to be able to achieve. So there's kind of two different levels to it. And I think certainly starting it with an exploration of what people's strengths are is a really powerful way into it, because they think, well, actually, I've already got a whole load of really good stuff. It might have worked in a really good way in the past, but how can I amplify that and do that in a different way, in a way that's right for both my personality and the organization I'm part of? And it's quite interesting and rewarding actually to see clients' eyes light up when you think, well, actually, there's some really strong stuff you've already got there to work with. And then it's about building on top of that afterwards.
So how are you doing that? Are you going into companies? Are they calling you in pre-promotion, if you will, and saying, you know, we need a leader. We need to put somebody in this role, in this leadership role. Help us identify who these people are. How do you go through that process with clients?
It's less that. I'd say it's more, and it can happen in two ways. So I think number one, probably most of my clients are in those roles already. And the sweet spot really is when they've just gone into those roles and where their energy is at its highest. They're still high on the joy of having got that promotion, going into that position. That classic first 90 days piece where you are never more invested in the role that you've got than when you first start it. And that's a really nice container of energy to work with, because you've got that permission to maybe make a few mistakes because you're new to it, right? And things can happen and knock off course, and you kind of feel like you've got that degree of flexibility to be able to work. So I think that's probably the main one. The other one is in the lead up to it. Now this isn't as prominent as the previous example, but it's where people are on the pathway to a more senior position, and more forward-thinking leaders and directors of businesses will get me in to help them to prepare for that pathway. Not necessarily because they're not ready for it, they are ready for it, but it's opening their eyes to, right, okay, what does this new role mean? How does it differ from what I currently do? What may I need to bring to the party now and prepare myself so when that promotion does come, be it in 3 months, 6 months, a year's time or whatever, that I can hit the ground running when I'm there. Now you can get success on both angles of that, but I work with clients in those two camps. What I tend not to do, at the moment anyway, at least, is to get involved with understanding who those people are and helping with that selection process. It would certainly be an interesting area to get into.
You might be talking to someone who has the technology to do that, but anyway, that's a topic for a later date. I'm curious.
Good
though.
plug there. I like it.
Yeah, you walked me right into it. I know that wasn't on purpose, but I had to mention it. But when you're working with people, I'm also interested to hear if you've been doing this for a while. Are there any maybe characteristics of a really, really good leader that upon meeting them, you just know that this person, maybe they need a little polishing, maybe they need a little work, but there's something that's just there. They're going to excel in leadership.
I think it's not so much a particular attribute or particular personality trait or anything like that. I think what it boils down to is self-awareness. Just having self-awareness to know, do you know what? I'm pretty damn good at what I do. Number one, that's good to have that healthy dose of, I'm in this position because I deserve to be here. Number one. But then secondly, that they're very well aware that they have got certain things that they're really, really good at, but also certain things that, do you know what? I'm rubbish at that. Either because they know from, I don't know, personality or behavioral profiling in the past that they're not so good at something, or they've been told they're not good at something, or they're just really aware and think, well, do you know what? That is not my bag. And if someone's going to do that, better for it to be person A or person B because they love that. For example, it may well be, someone said, you know what, I am rubbish at looking at detail. And rather than just slogging through and trying to understand a very detailed document, they get someone else to do it, surface up the headlines, and then they can kind of work with the top line piece as one kind of example. And I think that self-awareness is really critical because it allows people to go into a coaching conversation with a very open mind, but also, and this is quite important, a high degree of security. A number of people that come through for understandable reasons are feeling either like they're being tested or that this is an examination of their credentials for that role. And if they don't match up to it, then they might not be suitable for it. Absolutely not. I think the best example of a leader is someone that is prepared to do the work to make themselves the best leader as possible within a way that is right for them, not trying to be an identical leader with someone else, but doing it in a way that brings the very best of who they are to the table and marrying that up with what the organization needs. And the way I always think about it is almost like a graphic equalizer of different elements. Different people are going to have different strengths in different areas, different headrooms in different areas, etc., etc. And it's about finding what that right balance and blend is for the role that they're doing. You know, that might be on relationship side, it might be on the commercial side, the strategic side, sales side, business development, whatever. And it's about finding that happy medium in it. But I think the raw ingredients of all of that is having both the self-awareness and also then the humility, I guess, to understand that there's a bit of work to be done in making up for some of those areas.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to be perfect, especially when you're moving from one role to another or even one company to another. How do you balance that as a new leader, though? Because you're going through that personal transition of doing versus influencing, as you said. But then you also have to inspire the people beneath you who maybe some of them are jealous they didn't get that role. How do you balance that, the person to person aspect of it?
I think the key way, and this is not necessarily something I would advise, but certainly the way that I would go about it if I was doing that would be almost rebasing what those relationships are. And it may well be that you've got some legacy relationships with those people, and it's not going in and sort of saying, I'm in a more senior role now, this is how things are going to change. But almost, I think, demonstrate some vulnerability, share with people, do you know what? I'm in this new role now. It's great. Love it. Can't wait. But it also scares the bejesus out of me. And I don't really know. And I need some of your help to do that. And I think demonstrating that vulnerability and probably asking for help or leniency or whatever is a really good thing to do, because I think it helps to remind people that you're human, remind people and let people know that you are wanting to set yourself up for success and that you want them as part of the journey. And then it kind of depends on the size of the team, because to do that at scale is obviously quite hard. But certainly in, I'd say, teams of direct reports, I mean, I don't know, up to 6 to 8 direct reports or something like that, that's a really nice way of doing it, because you can build those relationships up. And I think if you do that, not only will you show up well with them, but subconsciously, when you're leading them, you'll feel like you don't have to blag it so much and you can be your genuine self.
So what I heard you say is you don't wave your new paycheck stub in their face and point and laugh at them. That's not a good way to go about that.
No, I mean, you could do that if you really wanted to. Probably a surefire way to lose friends and not influence people.
Yeah, right. You should write that version of the book.
I know. I really should. There's a book in me somewhere. Maybe that's it. I think that's the best way to do it. And it's going to vary from person to person, but almost giving yourself the permission to kind of go, look, just calm down. I know what I was like when I became a leader. Didn't even know what it was for a start, but I was like a bull in a china shop, and I thought I had to act in a certain way and do certain things. I fell flat on my ass, and I wish I'd done certain things differently. But I think that's the best way to do it, because it kind of just helps you to kind of relax your shoulders a bit and think, yeah, do you know what? I've got this. I've got enough in my locker room. I've got loads of experience. I've got the self-awareness that I need to improve in certain areas. That's fine. But I also need to bring those people with me. And the quickest way to do that is to kind of just meet them on a human level, not even on a professional, but meet them on a human level. And then the only way is up from there.
I think that's fantastic. And what would you say is, I'll end with this question, because I think this is, we're kind of skirting around this, but it's so obvious that this is at the foundation of this big sort of transition. What is the mindset shift that has to be made? Or let me ask you a different way. What's the mindset shift that you see your clients make over the course of that 3 to 6 month transition period from employee to leader, if you will, that if they just got that sooner, it would be so much easier?
I think the main thing is that it's okay not to get stuff right. You don't have to approach everything and think, do you know what? I've got to nail this now because I've got to prove my worth. It's just, do you know what? You learn more from the stuff that you don't get right than the stuff that you do, and that's fine. And I think if people can, I think I see that quite a lot, where clients come back to me after, a couple of weeks or so, or a month, depending on the frequency of the sessions. And they say, do you know what? Last time we worked together and you helped me to work through this, I had some great insights. However, it didn't quite work out like that. I used those, it didn't quite work, but that made me go in another direction. And seeing that growth happen is really great, because while it's not a direct link back to my coaching, and it doesn't need to be either, it enables them to use that as fuel to be able to do that. And I think knowing, do you know what? There's flexibility in the way that you can come to the right path, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the one that's been preordained. That's really, really good. And I think that comes from good self-confidence. And it comes from, the ability just to throw yourself into something and know that fundamentally you'll be okay, whichever side the coin falls.
I love it. That's great advice. Everything you said is really, really insightful for whether it's entrepreneurs who need to put people in leadership roles, you have a growing company, or if you yourself find yourself on this path or you desire to be a leader. I think all of this is just gold. So thank you, Steve. So where can the people listening, if they're on that path where they know they need to be there as their company, who are the companies that you just love working with, industries, company types, whatever it may be, and then where can people reach out?
Yeah, sure. Well, I work with companies of all different shapes and sizes. Professional services businesses are a hot topic at the moment. Proposition resonates really well with them. Lots of law firms, lots of accounting firms I work with at the moment. That's both in the UK, where I live, and also in the US. And you can find me at makeyourshift.co.uk.
If you couldn't tell, Steve is not from here. He is from the UK. So make sure you get that distinction in the URL. You know what, Steve? It was your lighting. I think that's what gave it away behind you. You can just tell by the room.
Often is.
I love it. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being here. This was great.
No worries, Brandon. Catch you soon.
For those of you watching and listening, all the links, all the ways to contact Steve down below in the show notes and description. And make sure you subscribe. We love putting these episodes out every single day of the week to help you build a more harmonious business and life. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch.